Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you? I see it's
I'm
only
good.
giving me the option
I'm
for audio. Is
good.
that right? Sorry, I'm a TikTok virgin today, so I'm learning a new skill along with everybody else.
No, it's perfect. We can also hear perfectly. Can you also guys hear on the other side? No, it's perfect. The sound is also good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay,
So yeah,
awesome.
please just tell us more.
Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity. CAPES is the Confederation of Associations in the Private Employment Sector, a big mouthful. But in essence, CAPES is the umbrella body that represents staffing companies, recruitment agencies, temporary employment service providers in South Africa. And we're very proud partners with SAYouth.mobi
Okay.
as part of the National Pathways Management Framework. And we're excited about the opportunity to help in empowering particularly young people how to improve their chances of job search.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we're just gonna get down to the business of the day. Can you please just tell us, as an employer, what is it that you're looking for? You probably share an opportunity or request people to submit their CVs.
Thank you. So yes, I had the pleasure this morning. I'm working with a whole group of recruiters to ask them, in their experience, what are the things that they look for most when looking through CVs. And a couple of interesting points. So the first is, I know we get taught to do cover letters, but it seems that everybody's very busy. So cover letters don't necessarily make any difference. And I know cost is important when we're faxing or emailing. So rather ensure that you've got a comprehensive CV than worrying too much about a cover letter. In the CV, it's very important that there are contact details. You can't believe how often somebody forgets to put their contact detail on or update their contact details. So even if an employer or an agency is keen to speak to you, they can't get hold of you. So it's usually a good idea to also perhaps have an alternative contact number, perhaps a parent, a friend, a sibling who you trust who is an alternate. So if they're unable to get hold of you on your phone, they're able to get hold of you through someone you trust. On that note, if I could also just make the suggestion that when we're in the job market and we're looking for a job, any number we don't recognize, we should assume it's a potential employer. So when we answer the call, we should be as professional as possible, so that that good first impression is created with the employer or the agency. In terms of the content of the CV, dates are really important. So we should always include the dates that we matriculated, if we've done any further studies or have any courses, when did we do them. If we have got some experience on our CV, to include the dates. And we appreciate that, particularly when we're first starting, we may just have short contracts or temporary jobs. And those are also important because they showcase our experience and our exposure. We can just put on there that this was a temp contract for 3 weeks, or it was a part-time position you did on weekends, so that it gives the employer an idea. So they don't assume that perhaps you've job hopped, that they were all opportunities that you didn't stick through. So we differentiate between a permanent role, a part-time role, and a contract role. And it's helpful for the employer or the agency to also see what you did. So you might have a fancy job title, but they may not know exactly what that is. So, and in the CV, to include a list of duties. So what did you do in the job, so that they get a sense of the skills you've acquired. And then perhaps just on the skills side, a lot of time we don't include a list of what our skills are. So if we are computer literate, that's great, but what are you computer literate in? And your colleague was talking about the importance of Excel earlier. Absolutely. Excel's a skill that companies look for. So what kind of computer packages are you comfortable using? Social media is big too. So I think we assume everyone can use social media, but if you are somebody who's confident using social media, that's a good thing. And perhaps while I'm on that, if all your online profiles are not private, remember that what you put on the internet is a billboard, and potential employers and agencies do check you out. So you should think about what's on there. And of course, you're free to be you, We should all be free to be ourselves, but at the same time, if we look like we just spend our whole lives partying, or perhaps we put inappropriate posts or jokes online, that can potentially turn off an employer or an agency, especially when they've got lots of choice. Rather go for someone that doesn't appear to be a risk, in inverted commas. Other technical skills might be perhaps you learn to type and you know how to type. That's a useful skill. We all work on computers. And today you can also access some free services online where you could do a test. So you could test yourself online to get a sense of how fast you type. That can be a useful piece of information for employers, particularly because a lot of roles, especially entry-level roles, may include data capture and other things. So if they can see that that's a skill you have, and it would be an advantage. I'm not sure if there are other specific questions. I can talk for ages, but I'm happy to take questions.
Now, what stands out is a bit something that you said that the first time, what do you call it? Your
First impression.
Your
First
impressions.
impression.
Thank you. Personally, I don't like your collar tunes. I don't know what they call them. Collar tunes.
Yes.
Yes, collar tunes where there's just a funny song that you're calling in. Does that somehow affect? Because I just personally don't like it, but I just wanted to know if that would also affect you as well, or does it have any effect in any way?
So I'm like you. I don't particularly enjoy them, and I guess it depends on what your choice is. So I guess it's the choice of song. If it's he might be a cool rapper, but if his choice of language is perhaps not great, I might just get that portion of the song, which kind of assaults my ears, and I think, wow, okay, I'm not sure. That's not a good first impression. So first impressions are not just when we're talking on the phone. Obviously, if we get called in for an interview, which is great, we need to make sure that we look neat and tidy. And I don't think there's an expectation that everybody looks like they're going to work at a bank with a suit and tie. But we need to be clean, we need to be smart, our shoes need to be polished, all those good things. But also our CV is our first impression. So we need to get somebody you trust to have a look at your CV, because sometimes we don't see spelling mistakes. We can use spell check online, but the famous one is metric and matric. So computer spelling checks don't recognize M-A-T-R-I-C. They don't know that. So they want to tell you to change it to metric, which is a unit of measurement, which we know is not the correct one. So it can be helpful to have somebody else you trust have a look at your CV and give you some advice on whether they think that it looks good. So spelling, we need to pay attention to, because attention to detail is one of the things we obviously look for in all employees, regardless of how much experience they have. And then things like how it's formatted, because, is it neat and tidy? You've used a consistent font. You haven't got funny tabs all over the place, because, again, that just says, did I pay attention when I put this together? It tells me something about your computer literacy. And not all of us are excellent at these things, so we might want to learn. We might want to get some help in this process. But the CV should be detailed enough. Should have your date of birth on it, and I think that's important. You mentioned earlier there are lots of opportunities for young people to access funding or learnerships and others, and many times these are directed specifically to youth. So it's helpful to have your date of birth on. You don't necessarily have to put your ID number on it, but your date of birth definitely will help to identify that you would be in that category. Hobbies can be useful too, especially for school leavers. Very often as a school leaver, I don't have any work experience to put on my CV. As a school leaver, I can perhaps include some of what I like to do, maybe some of the things I was involved with at school. Did I play sport? Because if I played sport, it says I'm a team player. It shows I have discipline. I went to practice. I'm committed. So those sorts of things help to give a potential employer an idea of who you are as a person, if there's not a lot of work experience to be able to reference. Subjects at school are also really important to include, because especially if an employer is considering bringing you on board for a learnership or further development, your subject choice may impact whether or not they think you would be a good fit for that role. I see there's some questions there. Shall I wait for you to ask them, or?
Right, thank you. No. Okay, so there's just I think it's just useful information as well, like personally also for myself. I think it's just some things that I was not aware of. Yeah. Or like your hobby is something that I never thought it would be that important. But now that you're spending it in that context, it makes so much sense. But then the other thing that I wanted to ask was, what is the filtering process that you use?
So agencies, and this is a good question. So it depends on the employer and the agency. So increasingly companies are using what we call ATSs, applicant tracking systems. And that's where you might have gone online and captured your CV into a database. And that's where keywords become important. So if you're applying for a specific job that wanted to know about data capturing, or it wanted to know about your it asks for particular requirements, you must make sure that your CV includes how you match those requirements, because the first part of the filtering process might not actually be done by a human being. It could be done through a computer system, and the computer system is going to be looking for keywords. It's also why it's nice to have a CV that looks pretty and is attractive. But having a CV in Word can be more useful than perhaps doing it in a fancy program like Canva, because that doesn't always pick up if the words are embedded in an image. It's not going to pick it up in an applicant tracking system.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. So what would be the advice that you give to a work seeker that actually just wants to stand out? For example, if some posts or positions, they might actually state that they're only looking for one person, and yet there's like 30 people that apply, they're not going for interviews. What would be probably some of the advice that you give for them to be able to stand out?
Okay, good. So I think that personalizing the application as far as you can. So yes, we said up front, a cover letter is not necessarily going to be value adding, but on the CV, if you highlight the skills, the experience that you have relative to what the job asked for, it makes it really much easier when an employer is filtering through potentially hundreds of CVs. Can it jump out the page that says, wow, this person ticks these boxes? It can be helpful to have a photograph on your CV. And I know sometimes I don't mean like a head and shoulders beauty photograph. It's not about whether you're beautiful or whether you've got fancy dress, but a nice picture of your face smiling, an approachable picture that can also make you stand out. So I can put a face to the name potentially. It could be a short, instead of a whole cover letter, maybe you have a short introductory paragraph. And in that paragraph, you just a few sentences. Who are you? What do you like to do? What do you think you could add value? What are you hoping to do with this next opportunity? So that could just be something that would help you to stand out from amongst the crowd.
Okay, right.
Right. So just to ask you a question, so this is a question from one of our ghost ladies.
From the chat. From the chat.
Sorry about that. So
no problem.
How often do they hire someone with no experience but is willing to learn?
So it's a good question, and it's always, I think it's one that comes up often. I think, the challenge can be that for when in entry-level positions, there are a lot of applicants. And so for some employers, it's easier to take someone who ostensibly has some experience because I've got some way of phoning a reference and checking that this person can do what they say. But we are seeing a move, definitely, especially in bigger organizations, particularly where there are opportunities for learnerships, apprenticeships, and others, where they are looking for young people who are looking to make their move. I think where you can, whilst you are still looking, is see how else you can make yourself look more attractive as a potential. You were talking earlier about doing some online free courses. So an employer would be looking to say, here's somebody who, while they're waiting for an opportunity, is looking at ways to increase their knowledge, their skills. They're not just sitting around waiting. Maybe you have the opportunity to volunteer in your community, even if it's just helping at your church or perhaps at your school, participating in those kinds of things. Because again, that gives an employer an indication that you are a go-getter, that you're willing to put in effort, and it helps you to stand out from the crowd. It shows them what we all want to say: we've got a good attitude and I'll be a great employee. But how can we show them that you are going to be what you say you're going to be?
All right, thank you so much, Natalie. And then the other question is, why is it hard for TVET college graduates to get internships, and it's mostly university graduates?
Wow, that's a big question, and I'm not sure I can answer it 100%. I guess.
Hopefully you can.
I think it depends probably on the nature of the internship. So again, just drawing on my own experience as a recruiter, we know that universities are typically more focused on the theoretical stuff. TVET colleges, by their nature, have a lot more practical experience as part of the course. And so I would think that where an employer is looking for someone to come in an internship or an apprenticeship in a more technical environment or for a more technical role, they would prefer somebody from a TVET college as opposed to somebody from a university. So again, I think it's about how do you help sell yourself. So if you were applying for a role, even if it was an admin role, but it's an admin role inside of an engineering company, and you come from a TVET background, maybe you could use the fact that you've come from a TVET where there's a more practical, hands-on application of learning and how that will help to translate in the workplace. You can help to sell yourself in that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And then the last question that we have is from Wandisile. So she's asking, what does entry level mean? I thought it means that no experience, but some posts say that it's an entry level, but it needs 2 years experience.
Yeah, it's one of those big topics. I know even at a sort of a NEDLAC level, we discuss this all the time. Entry level by its nature, one would assume, means I could be considered even if I haven't yet got any experience. But it's that age-old problem, isn't it? How do I get a job if I don't have experience? How do I get experience without having a job? And that's where I'd like to really recommend that young people consider all kinds of opportunities. A temporary employment service provider, working with one that is registered with the Department of Employment of Labour, if it belongs to a professional association under the CAPES banner, and you can go onto our website and you can see who those are. These are professional companies who will make sure that you're taken care of. You will be paid compliantly on time. They will pay UIF and all those things to make sure that you get a good opportunity. Because very often companies are more willing to, dare I say, tata ma chance with somebody that hasn't got experience if it's for a shorter term contract. And a few short term contracts, a few temp jobs get you experience on your CV, which could be the step to the next permanent job. Also, what often happens is I might be brought in as a temp to do some data capturing or some filing. And while I'm there, I'm exposed to the workplace. They get to see that I've got a really good attitude, I'm reliable, and they may then find an opportunity for me somewhere else within the business. So we should be open to even temporary roles that might not be in our ideal career, because they give us work experience, they give us workplace exposure, and they help to grow our networks and our opportunities. But as I said, work with agencies that belong to a professional body. They won't charge you any fees. It's illegal for agencies to charge you fees to register with them or to find you jobs. If you come across those are scams, and please do report them to us. We work with the Department of Labour to help protect job seekers. Work with agencies who can help you get access to the workplace, and don't be afraid to try new things. You never know where that temp job might lead.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much. I think you've been so wonderful. I think we'd stay on this live for the coming 3 hours. But I think we've covered most of the questions that our viewers had or listeners had. But just for your parting words, what advice would you give to a young person that's looking for a job? Probably feels like nothing is coming along. What advice would you give?
So my advice is, and I appreciate it, it's very frustrating and it can be disheartening, but I think do what you can to improve yourself. So take up opportunities, as we said, to experience new things, to acquire some new skills, even if it's self-taught, typing, practice Excel if you get opportunities. I know libraries have opportunities very often to utilize facilities. So there are opportunities, and try and stay as positive as you can, because that's the other thing. When we're engaging with someone, we're much more attracted to somebody who sounds enthusiastic, who sounds interested, who sounds excited about opportunities and willing to try. So that would be my advice, is put your best foot forward. And every time the phone rings and you don't know the number, assume it's an employer or prospective employer and give a great first impression. Thank you.